Great.
All right. So welcome to the podcast, Judy. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I would love to hear, as I always do, about your own motherhood journey and how it inspired your writing and work.
Well, okay. When I grew up in an era where it was pretty normal to use physical punishment to keep kids in line, as many of my generation have. And then I had my own children, and I've always been against that. It just didn't sit right with me. And I looked at my parenting mentors, so moms that I really admired, and they did things differently. They took more communication approaches with their children. So I started reading a lot of books. I took a lot of courses, and I tried things out on my own kids. And like a lot of parents, I think I was, you worry. You don't know if this is going to work, if you're doing the right thing, and especially if you're going against the tide. So about 85% of parents punish their kids. So I was in the 15% that wasn't. Mm-hmm. And you worry, well, oh dear, are they going to turn out okay?
So, very true. Our kids are our guinea pigs sometimes.
They are, especially the firstborn.
Yep.
And then once my kids were about 11 years apart between the oldest and youngest. And by the last two, I really relaxed and thought, okay, this is going to work.
Right. You just had a lot more knowledge and life experience and kind of knew what to expect.
Right.
Well, you've written a lot of books, and I will have already introduced you and talked about some of those. But I kind of want to start with, I think it's always good to get a historical viewpoint of discipline, and kind of if you could talk a little bit more about where, punitive discipline, especially, where and when it started in our culture and kind of the roots of this type of discipline, and why do you think there's such a need for change?
Well, it started back about a century ago. Children were either infants until age 7, and then they were considered adults. So children were punished if they behave badly. And then it really came into force with behavior modification. And the big guru of that is B.F. Skinner, who a lot of studies were done on animals and training and rewards and punishments, stimulus. And that's how we thought you deal with children. You train them with rewards and punishments, and didn't really consider them as humans with feelings and a brain. So, and that kind of thinking really continued through the 50s, the 60s, and then not so much in the 70s. We started getting more different viewpoints out there on communication and humanism.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
And with humanism, it was more a movement to respect children as people, as they have the same rights to their feelings and dignity as anyone else, even though they're really lacking in experience. And with that came Dr. Thomas Gordon, a little bit of the baby and child care, Dr. Spock, and with Dr. Thomas Gordon and parent effectiveness training, which came in 1962, that kind of grew into a whole host of other parenting programs like Adele Faber, Elaine Maslish, How to Talk So Kids Will Listen, Haim Janot. There's a whole bunch of researchers and writers and theorists on, treating kids like human beings. And that was good until the 1980s, and then there was a bit of a backlash. As these things do, the pendulum swings back and forth.
Right. Totally. Yeah. And I think a lot of parents it's hard to realize that, or we don't even realize that the foundation of our child's behavior, the foundation of this positive relationship with our child begins at birth.
Mm-hmm.
And it begins with showing our newborns and our infants that the world is a safe place that is going to meet their needs. And I know in your book, you've talked about how important early attachment is in the caregiver and baby relationship. And I want to hear a little bit more about that and how it relates to later behavior.
Well, when children are born, they are born thinking, feeling human beings. And when their whole job that first year is to attach to caregivers and feel safe and feel that their needs matter. Now, their brain development means they can't think about that, but every time, they cry and parents respond, it's that serve and return response. It reinforces those brain pathways that facilitate them feeling safe and nurtured and cared for and feeling good. And that's what grows into relationships.
Yeah. It's so important too, because I think there are little everyday things we do that we may not realize are kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like going against that early attachment relationship. Are there any kind of everyday things that might be encouraged by the culture that either do well for that relationship or hurt that relationship that parents may be unaware of?
I think the biggest one is the nature of crying. And I discovered that too. I think my son was 3 months old when I got my first advice to, let the baby cry. It's good for their lung development, which is absolutely no research behind that.
Right.
But there's these parenting myths that continue and are passed on to the next generation, and they're not medically based. So probably the biggest one is the crying in the first year. Parents are told not to pick up their babies. It will spoil them. And what that does is interferes with that serve and return response. So what parents should do or caregivers should do is if baby cries, pick them up, comfort them, find out what the need is. Is it hunger? Is it warmth? Is it boredom? Is it security? And meet the needs. So when you meet those needs, you're reinforcing those brain pathways that lead to healthy brain architecture. And it's good.
And it's easier said than done. Sometimes I know in that first, fourth trimester, there oftentimes may not be a visible need, right? I just changed a diaper, I fed her, I did this and that, and she's still crying. And that's okay. And I think it's important that parents understand that even just the warmth of your skin and the holding close is enough so that your child knows mom's here for me no matter what my emotions are, and they might not know why they're crying sometimes.
Exactly. And that's, and especially, parents who have babies that are colicky and you can't find out what that need is. The research coming out now shows that just providing comfort, picking them up, holding them close, saying that soft voice does turn that stress into tolerable stress for that baby. So it doesn't damage their brains. It helps them just deal with whatever they're dealing with at that point. So we always say just comfort them. Yeah. It doesn't hurt.
Helps keep their brain system regulated as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think, so this is, I have another question because I'm thinking like, my little guy is going to be 1 in a few weeks. And of course, I've started to notice some big developmental changes in terms of behavior. And there's definitely that autonomy phase that comes around at this age and more assertive behavior. I want to do this myself, mom, or don't take that away from me. So what this 12 to 24 month range, I think is really important in terms of behavior. And, can you tell our listeners more about what parents can expect from that and, what kind of where the term tantrum came from and what that is really meaning for the child typically.
Okay. Well, what happens around the first birthday? Obviously, children are up and walking. They're exploring, which is good. Their brains are driving them to explore, which is their developmental task for that age. But they don't know safety. They don't know what they're not supposed to touch. So they don't have that comprehension yet. So what happens is we keep them safe. We tend to put on limits, and they become very frustrated with those limits. And they can't talk to you. So they can't say, Mommy, I'm not feeling very good about you not allowing me another cookie. So, so they instead lie on the floor and scream and kick their legs. And that's how they deal with their frustration, which is perfectly normal. That is what you would expect for a child who doesn't have the words.
Right.
So our job in that age, that 12 to 36-month period, is we provide that regulation for them. So we provide the limits. We help them to express their feelings in a safe way, and we don't punish it. We let them express it, and then we teach them better ways to talk about it, which is using our words.
Mm-hmm. So modeling that language for them, like, oh man, you really didn't like it when XYZ happened, or that made you kind of upset.
That's right. That's right. When we active listen to them, or some people call it acknowledging their feelings, we're giving them the words for how they feel, and we're providing that empathy. Even though the limit still stands, we are still providing the empathy and comfort.
Right. This isn't we're not talking about permissive parenting where, children's get the rule of the land and they have, and they're in control. It's about, setting those healthy boundaries, allowing the child to do as much as they can, but setting healthy boundaries and just empathizing when a child is feeling upset about, maybe some of those boundaries.
That's right. That's what we call parental scaffolding. So if you think of scaffolding around a building, it's putting up that structure and framework until the building can stand on its own. And that's what parents do. They provide two things. They provide nurturing and they provide structure. And the nurturing is the hugs and kisses and acknowledging feelings. But the structure is the limit. So no, sorry, we can't have cookies for dinner.
Right.
And I hear that you're unhappy about that, right? So, and it's staying with your nose saying, but we can't have cookies for dinner. So that kind of both nurturing and structure.
And, I think around this autonomy phase, parents may start to get into some, I don't want to say bad habits, but, just some kind of reactions to their child's behavior that they may, maybe that was the way they were raised, or they may just not know any other way of reacting. And I know myself, I find that I have to kind of like stop myself. Sometimes my go-to reactions are not what not how I really want to be interacting with my child. And I have to read you this because my friend went to her 2-year-old's appointment, doctor's appointment, and this was from a pamphlet that the doctor hands out to parents routinely, right? So this is every parent of a 2-year-old gets this, and the title says "Won't stay in timeout?" ? And it says, if your child won't stay in timeout, take him or her back quickly and reset the timer. Some children will need to be held there, so hold their shoulders from behind. Tell the child that you will stop holding him or her when they stop trying to escape. Then avoid eye contact and don't do any more talking and pretend it doesn't bother you. If this doesn't work, use a bedroom with a gate blocking the door. And if you don't have a gate, hold the door closed. Like this is the mainstream advice. I mean, this is a progressive quote unquote hospital in the Bay Area of California.
Yeah. Oh dear.
I know.
I have to say though, it is changing. So for example, when our health organizations, we put out pamphlets on how not to shake your toddler when they're upset. And the wording used to say, when your baby won't stop crying, and then, which kind of implies that it's a choice for them. So
Absolutely.
we changed all the wording to when your baby can't stop crying. So I think as the research gets out there, I think more health organizations are going to change their literature. But I can't, I can't believe that is still pretty prevalent out there right now. And it kind of feeds that, new parent insecurity, like maybe I should be disciplining more. Maybe I should be punishing.
Well,
And
exactly. I don't understand when and why a pediatrician became the authority on how to quote unquote discipline your child. I'm like, kind of overstepping your profession here. Right?
yeah,
I mean, a little.
I agree. And I think all you can do is get the information out to parents on development and what kids are capable of, and then let parents make the choices on how they're going to handle that, for sure.
Right. The expectations are so important. I mean, oftentimes I see that parents are expecting their 2-year-old to do something that maybe an 8-year-old is capable of doing, but certainly not a toddler.
Yes, and that's huge. We call that the expectation gap. So when I think it was 0 to 3, they did a survey of parents and asked them at what age they thought children should have self-control, not to throw a tantrum or not to get upset over the word no. And about 23% of parents got the correct answer, but the rest didn't. So when the majority of parents expect kids under age 5 to listen to their parents and have self-control, and that is not what kids can do developmentally, then there's that expectation gap, right? And it's so not fair. We expect young kids to have that self-control and self-regulation when they don't have it yet with their brain development.
And a big thing that I've noticed, because I've heard that a child typically isn't until around the age of 5 that they can really internalize rules, and possibly even beyond that. And what I see is, we're creating school-like environments for younger and younger children, right? So we have these daycare centers where there's a schedule up on the board, or a preschool, right? Where 3-year-olds have this like minute by minute schedule and are expected to follow these 12 rules. We play nice, we share all of our toys, we do that. And it's like, that's just a recipe for a tantrum, if you ask me. Like, talk about, just, it's poor expectations, right? It's not developmentally appropriate for children to be able to be expected to follow these rules for that length of time. And I don't know, I'd love to get your take on that.
And I think the sad part is that we punish kids for doing things that their brain is not able to do. So when under age 5, if a child doesn't listen, doesn't comply 60% of the time, and that is normal and in line with their brain executive function capabilities. So that 60% of the time, then we're punishing them. We're telling them to sit down, be quiet, not hit their little friend. But they start to think of themselves as bad little people. And it's not fair. It's like us telling a child in a wheelchair, oh, you can't climb those 3 stairs. Okay, go to your room and think about it. That is just not fair. And we have to get that out to parents, that be aware of this expectation gap. And we can't expect kids to sit still and listen and be compliant until age 6. That's why mandatory school starts at age 6.
Right. And I would argue that even beyond that age, kids still need plenty of free play and plenty of time to just work it out, get it out of their system. I think this all day, indoors recess for 10 minutes stuff is just not enough.
No, kids need to move, especially before the teen years. They learn through activity, through experiential knowledge. They learn through play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of school, it was very dismaying to Google this. This is in the US. I found out that in public schools, it's still legal in 19 states to spank a child, to hit a child. It is still legal for teachers to do that. And that is so, I mean, I was just appalled when I saw that. And it's really scary. I don't know what the laws are like in Canada where you are, but, this is just, how do we get the message out that not only is physical punishment ineffective, but it's also essentially traumatizing a child?
It's hard. We try and get it out through education, through advertising campaigns. But again, when parents are under stress, we tend to revert back to what we know. So if parents are spanked, we try it because that's what we know. But I think we really need to get the message out to parents to calm down first before your child does anything, or before you do anything to your child. And a lot of times when we want to discipline, we're embarrassed, we're under stress, we're angry, we're frustrated. And parenting is one huge executive function job.
Right.
Right?
Oh, totally.
And we have varying levels of self-control too. So I think if we just take a few minutes to get our breath, take our time out, we can make way better decisions on what to do when our children do things we don't like.
That's so true. And I truly believe that what helps so much with that is just simplifying life. You know what I mean? Like we are just, people are working 1.5 jobs and they have 4 kids and, it's just like all this stuff. We're scheduling our kids down to the last minute of their day. And that, just the complexity of the lives that we live, I think adds to this underlying mental stress. So we're always kind of at that breaking point, and so the slightest thing can send us over the edge.
And I think we live very complex lives, and I think education and child rearing is very competitive. Parents feel a lot of judgment, and I think they just have to realize that what they're doing is fine. They're okay. If they don't pack on another 10 activities, they're going to be fine. Their kids are going to be fine. And, as long as we provide nurturing and structured parenting for 70% of the time, we're doing fine. Right? We're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. And that's okay. Kids make mistakes too, and it's all good.
It's a work in progress. The job is never done.
No, but it gets better.
Yes, it does. That's very true. It gets, there's just less intensity, I think, too, as the kids are older. But also, we can't expect ourselves to empathize with our children if we can't be empathetic towards ourselves, right? So just understanding like, okay, mommy made a mistake today, and that's okay.
That's right.
Yeah. Let's switch gears a little bit, because I think beyond toddlerhood, as children get older, preschoolers, young children going into school, we get into this world of like, this cycle of like bribes, punishments, rewards. We have the little sticker charts for going potty, or, even for grades. Well, grades in themselves are really a form of a reward, but, maybe we on top of that have another reward for our children if they get good grades, or we have to coerce them into doing chores and homework. And what are your thoughts on those, and how, for parents who are finding themselves stuck in these kinds of cycles, what advice do you have?
Well, I think it's easy when kids are young. I mean, we say, redirect them, childproof, keep them safe, right? But as they're moving into the school age years, the reliance on bribery and punishments is very heavy. And always disagreed with that. I think you can raise wonderful kids without bribery and punishment. Now, how do you get them to listen?
Everyone's question.
Right. Well, kids are amazing. They really, really do want to listen, and they want to meet your needs. But if their needs contradict that, they're born very egocentric, and as they get older, they learn to look at other people's needs and feelings too. So a 6-year-old may not want to meet your needs as much as a 12-year-old might. But I think what parents don't realize is if you do not punish your kids, you grow your relationship and you grow your influence on your kids. So as they get older, they want to meet your needs more and more, and you matter to them.
Well, and you're demonstrating that, again, that empathy piece and the respect.
Yes. And parents don't trust that because it's not something they see. It's right. That influence in a relationship is something you feel and you know it's going to happen. And the more you work with kids to solve your mutual problems, and you're going to have many of them as they grow up, you're going to have a lot of conflict of needs. But if you work at it as you would with any other adult in your life, your partner, your mother, your neighbor, your boss, you work at it with the same respect, you will get that respect back and that cooperation.
That's so true. And I think it's really scary for some parents to imagine a world where they don't use punishment. You know, we have this image of like a screaming child running loose in the house, like throwing things down everywhere. And I think it's so important for parents to understand that that is not necessarily the result of zero punishment, right? That word, like no punishment, is scary to people. Because I think also we feel like our children are a reflection of ourselves, you know, and our children's behavior says something about our parenting. And I just think it's scary for some people to kind of imagine life without having to fall into these cycles of rewards and punishments.
It is very scary, and I empathize with parents that it is scary, but when they come to me for coaching, I say, okay, well, you tell me they won't talk to you, they won't listen to you, they won't do what you want, but you don't want to give up punishments, right? It's like their crutch.
Yeah.
And many parents of older kids, they give them cell phones, laptops, tablets, so they can take them away. That's the currency they use. And what that does is it creates a cycle of kids don't listen, take away the electronics, kids shut down communication, parents aren't in the loop, and it just escalates from there. It becomes a cycle of give them back their devices, take them away, and then they realize why their kids don't talk to them or don't want to do anything with them, right?
Sure.
It impacts that hugely. Sure, kids start to fall in line because they want their electronics, but then they don't talk to parents. They shut them out of their lives.
Right. It doesn't address the underlying relationship between the parent and child. And it becomes this really like contingent love, almost like when you do this, I love you. If you do that, I don't.
Right. Yeah. Very conditional.
Yeah. And, you know, we touched on a little bit earlier about schools and how the school environment has really adopted this behaviorism approach. And, you know, it may not look how it did back when they were slapping wrists, right? But there are very much still these subtle forms of behaviorism in schools. And I kind of, you know, something that I've become interested in is how that shows up at earlier and earlier ages. But we could also talk, because I know you talk a lot about teenagers too, and how school kind of reinforces those that whole consequence and behaviorism. So can you talk a little bit more about how in our culture this starts so early and then continues on up, and how that kind of changes?
Well, it does. I know not so much in preschools, but I do know as soon as kids reach kindergarten. I mean, I've seen the timeout boxes in schools, and the detentions, and the straps. There are that is still allowed. And then the rewards, the pizza coupons, the awards night, the whole school industry, the whole works on punishments and briberies. And marks are another example of bribes. The problem, and I don't see that as a really bad thing. I think schools have to, because they only get your kids for a year or so. Parents, on the other hand, do not have to punish their kids because they're building a lifelong relationship that the schools aren't. So I tell parents, you have a vested interest in your kids to start working things out by problem solving. Everybody else in the world is going to give your kids punishments and rewards. The coaches.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, that's how it works, right?
Yeah.
But you don't have to do that in your family or your relationship. So I actually know of some schools that don't use punishments and rewards, and they are more like a family. They use problem solving and
community
kids,
to talk about.
Those kids build real relationships with their teachers, and it's beautiful to see, because the more relationships kids have with adults, the better, especially in this digital age. So
I think, and it really comes down to like what, thinking long term, and what traits do we want our children to have as adults? How do, where do we value, or what traits do we value, and how do we see them as being successful later on? And I think a lot of this whole bribery, rewards, punishment teaches children to kind of blindly obey. The more powerful take over the less powerful, or tell the less powerful what to do. Mm-hmm. And, these just aren't traits that we would want to see in our children. We want to see that they can be community oriented and be kind, compassionate, be able to work through arguments verbally mm-hmm. rather than using coercion.
It's funny to see the first week of September on university campuses, because these are kids who, for the first time, they're 18 years old. They've been out from under the control of their parents for 3 days, and the garbages are full of alcohol containers.
Oh,
they are free and partying.
I know.
I think they do wear out by October, but whereas if you treat your kids, and I always say, okay, if you're using punishments and rewards, at least by age 13, you're in the last third of parenting. Stop. Move more to a problem-solving model, because they got 6 years still to make mistakes, to help access you, to work things out, and that's a great time to shift from those behavior modification ways of doing things to a more communication-based way of doing things.
Right, including the child in the solution, really.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. They're part of the solution. It's not you working against the child. It's you and the child on the same team working against the problem and putting both your brains together to figure things out.
Right. Well, I think a lot of our thinking about, children need discipline, children need this and that, comes from this kind of lack of trust that we have in children. We don't trust that children are born, wanting to be socially accepted, wanting really to get along, to be cooperative. And, from day one, we kind of see children as these things that need to be trained, need to be manipulated, just need to be put in line. And it can be so toxic, I think, to the parent-child relationship. And it really teaches a child that, okay, maybe I am this evil person that my parents think I am, internalizing that.
I do. I think it's a lack of trust of children's development. One of the things I talk about is that parents look at their 2-year-old and they think, oh, my child's hitting, I have to nip this in the bud right now, or they're going to be hitting their friends at 15. Right. And it's that snowball effect. And we say to parents, no, they're in a different stage of development. They have their executive function skills then. They will not be hitting. Even if you just let it go now, if you don't even say anything right now, kids eventually learn what society expects, and they do what they're expected as they have the brain development to do that. Right? So we have to trust the process. We have to trust that kids want to be good citizens, want to be members of the family, and want to do what's right.
Absolutely.
And just guide that.
Yeah. Right. It's so important to just educate about those the readiness and the milestones. So speaking of, how can our listeners find out more about your books and your work as a parent educator?
I have a website called professionalparenting.ca, and I've just released a new book. I have 3 books now. The first one was Discipline Without Distress. So that's all non-punitive parenting. And then parents would say to me, well, okay, but how do I handle the anger in order to get to non-punitive discipline? And then I thought, I got to write another book. So I wrote the Parenting with Patience, and that has all the developmental information from 0 to 21 in that book, right? And then I wrote a book. My recent one is Attachment Parenting Tips, Raising Toddlers to Teens. And that is no theory, no opinion. It's all just typical situations and what you can try, what you can do.
Oh, that's great. So it's super just like hands-on, helpful case studies almost.
It's tips that are available on your phone. So you can purchase the ebook, and then you can just go down, and they're all divided into ages. And it gives a little bit of a brain information, like 1 or 2 sentences of where that child's brain is at that age, and then a whole host of suggestions what to try.
That sounds so helpful. Well, thank you so much, Judy, for being here today. It was such a pleasure to chat with you.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to chat with you too.
Yeah. And then I'll stop when I go back and edit, I can stop the recording here.
Okay.
Perfect. I always have to say that to my guests just so they know we're off air.
Okay. That's good.
But yeah, I wanted to just thank you again, because I trained with Barbara and Lisa of API earlier this year, and that's how I came across your work.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I really wanted to have you on. I think that'll be so helpful for parents to just kind of have some like common sense guide to the tips.
That is great. Yeah, that's super. Well,
and yeah. What I'll do, I was just going to mention real quick that I'll have, once the episode comes out, it's due for August, to air in August. Okay. I'll send you an email with the link, and then I'll also have links to all of your books and website in the show notes so that listeners can just go straight there and access them.
Oh, that's great. Awesome. Yeah.
Have you been on done a podcast before, like an iTunes podcast?
I think I did a podcast on unschooling with someone, but I don't really listen to them, so I don't know.
That's okay, because mine is not only on iTunes, but it's also on a website, so you can just go to the website, and you could share it on your own website too if you wanted to.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Okay, well, I'll just, and go ahead. You can, whenever you're done with the recording, you can just send it over to the Attachment Parenting Podcast at Gmail, and then I can edit it from there.
Okay, that sounds great.
Thank you, Judy, so much. I'll be in touch soon, okay?
Okay, thanks a lot.
All right, take care. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.